Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting truly well informed, cutting through the noise to bring you those essential insights from critical reports and analyses. Today, we are diving deep into a digital world where the stakes are incredibly high. Get this, ransomware attacks in the Asia-Pacific jumped by roughly 39% in 2023. Just 1 year. That's not just some number. It really brings home the reality of the escalating cyber battleground affecting nations, businesses, even individuals like you and me. So our mission today is to unpack this whole dynamic landscape. We're looking at the evolving cybersecurity threats and, honestly, the incredibly complex, often quite fragmented world of data governance right across the Asia-Pacific APAC. We've got a pretty solid stack of sources for this deep dive. There's a crucial Interpol threat assessment from just this year, 2024. We've got an analysis of China's really groundbreaking cybersecurity law. We're also looking at insights into broader APAC data governance trends, looking ahead to 2025, plus some really fascinating comparisons between various regional data privacy laws and the EU's GDPR, which is often seen as the gold standard.
And to round it all out, a critical piece on, well, the unsettling trend of digital authoritarianism. Our goal for you, our listener, is simple. Cut through the complexity, deliver those aha moments. We want you to walk away with a clear understanding of the major threats, the diverse regulatory responses, and the critical challenges and opportunities in this rapidly changing digital region. But before we jump right in, a quick but really important shout out to our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com. If you're a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer, or any security leader needing critical resources, cutting-edge solutions, or just invaluable connections to stay ahead in this, frankly, tough environment, their platform is a genuinely invaluable resource. It connects perfectly with our theme today, robust cybersecurity, compliance, making sure you have the tools to navigate the very complex waters we're about to explore. We really appreciate their support. Okay, let's get into it. First stop, that Interpol Asia and South Pacific Cyber Threat Assessment Report 2024-44. It paints a pretty stark picture, doesn't it? What are the biggest threats they're flagging right now?
It's absolutely essential reading, yeah. It really highlights how pervasive and sophisticated cybercrime has become everywhere, but with some really alarming trends, specifically in APAC. Interpol flags online scams as probably the most prolific threat right across the region.
Scams, okay. But we're not just talking about those old, poorly spelled emails anymore, are we?
Oh, not at all. What we're seeing now is the widespread availability and professionalization of scams as a service, SaaS platforms.
Scams as a service, like software as a service, but for crime.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Cybercrime's been democratized. These SaaS platforms give even less capable criminals, maybe even novices, access to really sophisticated automated tools. They can generate highly convincing phishing emails, set up fake websites, e-commerce, courier services, you name it, manage payment gateways, even handle fake refunds. It's a whole ecosystem.
Wow.
It lowers the barrier to entry dramatically, so you get a much larger pool of people running these sophisticated campaigns that, honestly, they couldn't have dreamed of before.
That sounds terrifyingly efficient for them, but yeah, terrifying for everyone else. It's like they've industrialized deception. So what's the usual way in? Phishing still.
You hit the nail on the head. Industrialization. And yes, phishing is still the #1 initial access method, consistently reported as the top tactic in reconnaissance and getting that first foothold. The report partly blames this on, well, what it calls inadequate cybersecurity education in both public and private sectors across APAC.
Right. People just aren't trained to spot these things.
Exactly. Many organizations and individuals, too, just aren't equipped. And here's where it gets really concerning, especially looking ahead to 2024-2025. Interpol expects a significant rise, maybe even exponential, in phishing emails hitting APAC targets. And the reason? Generative AI integrated into these SaaS platforms.
AI. So making the scams better. How?
Remember how a key giveaway used to be bad grammar, poor translations, weird phrasing?
Yeah, you could often tell it wasn't quite right.
Well, generative AI can now produce machine translations with incredible accuracy, nuance, even cultural context. They can craft totally convincing phishing emails in Mandarin, Bahasa, Hindi, Thai, you name it. It removes that crucial identifier, makes the scams much harder to spot, far more believable, and, well, much more effective. It's a fundamental shift, a real headache for defenders.
So AI makes the language barrier disappear for scammers.
Yeah.
That's unsettling. What about ransomware? It feels like it's always in the news globally. Is it hitting APAC just as hard?
Oh, ransomware is definitely a rapidly growing and incredibly damaging threat in APAC, no doubt about it. The report points to roughly a 39% surge in attacks there in 2023.
39%, that's huge.
It is a big jump regionally. But it's worth noting, North America and Europe still see more incidents overall. North America had a staggering 109% rise, Europe 52% in the same period.
Okay, so APAC is catching up maybe, or becoming a bigger target.
Probably a bit of both. Reflects the region's growing digital economy, its value to criminals, the most targeted sectors, manufacturing, real estate, and financial services.
Makes sense. Critical industries, lots of data, can't afford downtime.
Precisely. They're prime targets for extortion. And a key part of this whole ecosystem is the initial access brokers, the IABs.
Right, the ones who break in and then sell the access.
Exactly. They specialize in getting that initial foothold and then selling it to ransomware groups. Now, they're still crucial in APAC, but interestingly, the market's seen a bit of a shift towards less sophisticated access points being sold.
What does that mean? Easier targets.
It could mean criminals are finding easier ways in, maybe indicating a lower overall security posture in some areas, or just a wider attack surface because everything's digitizing so fast.
And beyond just paying the ransom, which I imagine is huge.
Okay, so.
What are the other impacts? It must go way beyond just money, right?
Absolutely. The impact of data extortion, which is core to ransomware now, is pervasive. It's not just the ransom demand. First, there's severe reputational damage.
Yeah, trust is hard to win back.
Exactly. If sensitive data gets leaked, public trust evaporates. That leads to lost revenue, customers leaving, a damaged brand. Then the direct financial hit, not just the ransom, which, get this, globally exceeded $1 billion in 2023.
$1 billion. Well,
Yeah, $1 billion, despite some big law enforcement takedowns. But you also have huge costs from operational disruptions, system recovery, investigations, legal fees. It adds up incredibly quickly. And increasingly, there are major regulatory impacts. Data breaches trigger tough notification rules under various privacy laws. We'll get into those laws soon. So companies face big fines, plus intense scrutiny from regulators.
So it's a legal and compliance nightmare on top of everything else.
Completely. Adds another layer of burden. And the report specifically mentions India as a primary regional target for ransomware.
Why India particularly?
Likely a combination of factors. Its huge number of businesses, many digitizing rapidly, maybe combined with a perceived lower average level of cybersecurity maturity compared to some Western countries, makes it an attractive target for these opportunistic criminals.
$1 billion. The scale is just staggering. And the ripple effects sound devastating. Okay, beyond scams and ransomware, what other kinds of threats is Interpol seeing emerge or evolve in APAC?
They highlight several other key trends. It really paints a picture of a very active, very adaptable threat landscape. For one, there's a notable increase in compromised payment cards coming from APAC banks.
Card theft.
Yeah, and it's linked directly to two things. The boom in online financial transactions, just more opportunity, and the sheer amount of stolen data available from previous breaches that criminals reuse. Closely related is the rise of info stealers and banking trojans. These are nasty bits of malware specifically designed to hit APAC's fast-growing digital financial services. They go after logins, financial details, personal data.
And I bet those are easy to get hold of, too.
You guessed it. Many operate as malware as a service, just like the scam platforms. Easily accessible tools for a wide range of criminals. Something else that's emerging and quite concerning is data extortion without ransomware actually being deployed.
How does that work? They just steal the data and threaten to leak it.
Exactly. Instead of encrypting systems, some groups just steal sensitive data and threaten to release it or sell it on the dark web. No encryption involved.
Why do that? Is it easier?
It's partly to evade law enforcement, which has gotten better at tracking and disrupting traditional ransomware operations, following the money, seizing servers. By just stealing and extorting, they hope to hide their tracks better, make attribution harder. It's a constant cat and mouse game. They're always adapting.
It really is a dynamic battlefield.
Yeah.
So, given all this, what are the underlying weaknesses? The systemic challenges in APAC that make the region so vulnerable to these kinds of attacks?
There are several deep-rooted factors. A major one is just the sheer speed and scale of digital transformation. Everywhere.
Accelerated by the pandemic, I suppose.
Massively accelerated by COVID-19. Businesses, governments, everyone rushed to adopt digital solutions for remote work, e-commerce, public services. Often these were rolled out super fast, maybe without integrating comprehensive security measures from the start.
building fast, not necessarily strong.
Kind of like building a skyscraper quickly without all the structural checks. It leaves new vulnerabilities exposed. Then there's the huge manufacturing base, think China, Taiwan, Vietnam, especially in critical semiconductors. This creates incredibly complex and very attractive supply chain vulnerabilities.
Right, one hit on a small supplier can cause chaos down the line.
Huge cascading effects, potentially global. Another persistent major issue is the cybersecurity skills gap. It's been talked about for years, but it's still acute. While APAC actually had the highest regional increase in cybersecurity pros in 2022, about 15.6%, there's still an estimated gap of over 2.1 million skilled workers.
2 million. That's enormous.
It is. And that shortage severely hinders effective defense. Organizations are understaffed, unprepared. Plus, there are real challenges in collaboration between law enforcement, the private sector, the judiciary. Cybercrime ignores borders, right? But differing national laws complicate investigations, prosecutions, getting timely attribution. It can create safe havens.
And just basic awareness.
Yeah, finally, insufficient cyber awareness and basic hygiene among companies, especially smaller ones, just undermines resilience. Many are still resistant to investing in robust security or even basic employee training, easy targets.
It's clear this needs a coordinated, multi-pronged response. So with this complex web of threats and vulnerabilities, what is Interpol actually doing on the ground? How are they trying to build a safer APAC?
Interpol, being global, is deeply committed to boosting law enforcement capabilities everywhere, but especially in Asia-Pacific given these trends. They do it through tools, secure platforms, operational support, all aimed at better cross-border police cooperation. A key initiative is the G-LACIA project's Global Action on Cybercrime funded by the Council of Europe. These projects focus on promoting consistent cybercrime laws across nations, building police capacity to investigate effectively, and helping justice systems prosecute cases.
Sort of creating a common playbook.
Exactly. A unified front against a global problem. And several APAC countries are actively involved. Fiji, Tonga, Timor-Leste, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, sharing best practices, building those common capabilities.
That's good to hear about the cooperation. Did Interpol identify specific areas where law enforcement needs more help, more training to keep up? Where are the biggest skill gaps for the defenders?
Oh, yes. Their 2024 Global Training Needs Assessment is quite revealing. It shows strong demand for capacity building in several critical areas. Top of the list, cybersecurity breach response, basically, what to do right after an incident. Then, cryptocurrency investigations, tracing virtual assets, dealing with crypto exchanges, which is vital now for financial crime. Advanced OSINT open source intelligence, using public info for investigations.
So digital forensics and tracking money.
That's a big part of it. Also, data stream and network analysis to understand complex infrastructures, plus the fundamentals. Computer and mobile forensics, malware analysis. And interestingly, there's keen interest in learning how to conduct covert investigations online, safely navigate the dark web where a lot of this happens, and deal with evidence from new tech like AI, VR, and
Future-proofing investigations almost.
Right. And finally, getting cross-border electronic evidence, understanding the complex legal maze of multi-jurisdictional crime, and really leveraging Interpol's own tools, like their ASPJOC desk, for faster intelligence sharing. It's about equipping law enforcement for a very modern fight.
Okay, so we've got this stark picture of the threats, the attack side. Now, let's flip the coin. How are countries and businesses responding? What shields are they trying to build? This brings us to data governance and privacy in APAC, and it sounds like it's, well, complicated.
Complicated is an understatement. It's a truly fascinating landscape, because while many countries in the region do look to the EU's GDPR for inspiration, you're right, it's often seen as the global benchmark because it's so comprehensive and has that long reach.
Right, the standard everyone compares against.
Yeah. But then each nation takes that inspiration and tailors its approach. They adapt it to fit their own unique political systems, economic priorities, social contexts. The result, a complex patchwork of regulations.
Which must be a nightmare for businesses operating across borders.
Exactly. It creates huge compliance challenges. How do you ensure you're compliant when the rules can change so dramatically from, say, Singapore to Vietnam to India, even though they're all in the same broad region, and these rules are constantly being updated too?
That complexity really highlights why having the right resources is so crucial for security leaders, for CISOs. It makes me think of our sponsor, www.CISOmarketplace.com. Navigating this kind of varied, challenging legal landscape is precisely where a platform offering solutions and connections becomes indispensable for maintaining compliance and strong security. So let's start with the big one, China. Our sources paint its framework as particularly stringent, very comprehensive. How did their laws develop, and what's the scope, especially given China's unique take on data and state control?
China moved incredibly fast to build what's arguably one of the world's most robust and stringent data protection frameworks. It really ticked off with their cybersecurity law, the CSL, in 2017. Then very quickly came the Data Security Law, DSL, and the Personal Information Protection Law, PIPL, both in 2021. Together, these three, CSL, DSL, PIPL, form the core legal structure. But here's the key thing to grasp, the real aha moment for many outside China. This framework isn't just about privacy like GDPR is. It's fundamentally designed to bolster national cybersecurity and state sovereignty.
So privacy is intertwined with state control.
Deeply intertwined. Data is seen as both an economic asset and a national security concern. It's a distinct approach, really setting a precedent globally. And the scope, exceptionally broad. The term network operator in the CSL basically covers almost any business owning or managing a network in China, websites, cloud services, internal networks, you name it. So pretty much everyone operating there is caught.
And then there are the CIOs,
Yeah,
critical information infrastructure operators.
right. Even stricter rules apply to them. These are entities in vital sectors, communications, energy, transport, finance, public services, e-government, defense, tech. Basically, anything whose damage or data leakage could seriously harm national security, the economy, or public life. It's a very broad, strategically important definition.
Hugely comprehensive. So what are the key requirements under these laws, especially around things like data localization and sending data out of China? Those are huge worries for multinationals, right?
Yeah, definitely. The requirements are specific and often very strict. For regular network operators, things like having security policies, designated security staff using protection tech, and crucially monitoring network activity and keeping logs for at least 6 months.
6 months of logs, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Plus data classification, backups, encryption, and strict real name ID verification for many services. For CIOs, it ramps up. Dedicated security bodies, background checks on key staff, regular training, disaster recovery backups, mandatory emergency drills. It's a whole security posture approach. Now, cross-border data transfer, this is where China really stands out as stringent. If you're a CIO, or you process data on over 1 million people, or you handle what they call important data.
And important data could be interpreted broadly.
Very broadly, yes. The authorities have a lot of discretion there. If you fall into those categories, you must undergo a mandatory security assessment by the state network information departments. It's rigorous, and approval typically lasts only 2 years.
Wow. And for others?
For most others, the main mechanism is likely standard contractual clauses, SECs. But China's SECs are known for being inflexible. You generally have to adopt them as is, no major changes. And here's another major difference from GDPR and many others. China's framework generally lacks legitimate interest as a lawful basis for processing personal data.
No legitimate interest. That's huge. That underpins so much processing elsewhere.
It really is. Under GDPR, it allows processing for justifiable business needs if they don't override individual rights. Think fraud prevention, network security. Its absence in China forces companies to rethink everything. Often you need explicit consent for things that would fall under legitimate interest elsewhere.
So very strict rules, broad scope. What happens if you don't comply? Are the penalties severe? Any examples?
The penalties are significant, potentially crippling. Fines can go up to 5% of your previous year's turnover or a fixed RMB 50 million. For responsible individuals, even up to RMB 100 million.
That's serious money.
Absolutely. And beyond fines, you could face business suspension, losing your license, even getting banned from operating in China entirely. And they do enforce it. Our sources note that soon after the CSL came in, regulators started using it. Big names like Tencent, Baidu, Sino Weibo faced investigations. Interestingly, not always for data breaches, but sometimes for failing to control user-posted content deemed inappropriate.
So it underscores that focus on controlling the information space, not just privacy.
Exactly. It's about shaping the digital environment, reinforcing national cyberspace sovereignty.
A very clear message. Okay, moving away from China, let's look at South Korea. Their Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA. How does that stack up against GDPR? Is it the Asian gold standard some say it is?
South Korea's PIPA has definitely made huge strides towards GDPR alignment. That was largely driven by their successful push for an EU adequacy decision, which they got in late 2021.
So the EU basically said Korea's laws are good enough.
Essentially, yes. So in many ways, PIPA is fairly consistent with GDPR. It's a strong example in Asia. They have similar broad definitions of personal data, recognize controller-processor roles, though they use different terms like personal information handlers. They have comparable rules for kids' data consent and similar legal bases for processing consent, contract performance, vital interests, and importantly, legitimate interest is included, unlike China. Data transfer concepts are also similar in principle.
But I bet there are still important differences, right? Where do things diverge? What trips up businesses working across both regions?
Yes, absolutely. Despite the consistency, there are critical distinctions. For one, PIPA doesn't explicitly define its extraterritorial scope as broadly as GDPR does. In practice, they look at factors like targeting Korean services, but it's not as clearly spelled out. Data protection impact assessments, DPIAs. Under PIPA, they're mainly required only for public organizations. GDPR requires them much more broadly based on high-risk processing. That's a big difference in compliance load.
Okay. What else?
Responsibilities for data protection officers, DPOs, differ slightly, and breach notification timelines are different. PIPA generally gives data handlers 5 days to notify the regulator, PIPC, and individuals, but telcos and ISPs have a stricter 24-hour window. GDPR has that standard 72-hour notification to the authority for risky breaches.
So faster in some cases in Korea.
Potentially, yes. Also, PIPA doesn't use the term accountability in the same overarching way GDPR does, although it's implied through requirements. And a big recent change. PIPA's 2023 updates gave the PIPC new power to actually suspend cross-border data transfers. That's a strong enforcement tool.
Suspend transfers, wow.
Yeah, could really impact data flows quickly. Lastly, PIPA lacks a really clear right to object, quite like GDPR's comprehensive right for individuals to object to certain processing.
Got it. So similar framework, but crucial nuances. Now let's pivot to India. Their Digital Personal Data Protection Act, DPDPA, from 2023. Sounds like a massive shift for the world's most populous country and a huge digital economy. How does it compare? Any really unique Indian aspects?
India's DPDPA 2023 is absolutely a landmark law, a whole new era for data processing there. It does align with GDPR in broad strokes, defining data fiduciaries like controllers and data principals, data subjects. And the penalties are serious, up to INR 2.5 billion. That's around 28 million euros or over 30 million US dollars. Shows they mean business. However, and this is where it gets really interesting and challenging for global companies, the DPDPA has several major gaps and unique concepts compared to GDPR. Organizations need to take significant, sometimes non-intuitive extra steps if they're only used to GDPR.
Okay, tell me about these gaps and unique features. What really sets India's law apart?
First, DPDPA strictly regulates digital personal data. And unlike GDPR, it makes no distinction between personal and sensitive personal data. So one high standard applies to all digital data. Simpler in one way, but broadens the scope of what needs top protection. Critically, and this is a massive divergence requiring strategic shifts, DPDPA does not allow processing personal data based on contractual necessity or legitimate interests.
Wait, neither of those. That's huge. They're fundamental bases under GDPR.
Exactly. Contractual necessity processing needed to fulfill a contract. Legitimate interest processing for justifiable business needs that don't override rights. Without these, companies in India have to completely rethink why they're processing data. Often, they'll need explicit consent for a much wider range of activities than elsewhere. Then you have the unique concept of significant data fiduciaries, or SDFs.
Okay, what are they?
These are data controllers deemed significant based on the scale and risk of their processing. They face extra, tougher obligations. They must appoint a data protection officer who must be resident in India and report directly to the board, very high level.
Resident DPO reporting to the board. Wow.
Yeah. Plus, periodic data audits, regular data protection impact assessments, risk mitigation measures. It's a higher bar. Another totally unique concept, consent managers.
Consent managers, what do they do?
These are third-party entities registered with India's Data Protection Board that act on behalf of individuals' data principals to manage their consent across different services.
Like a central dashboard for all my permissions.
That's the idea. Could be great for user control, but adds another layer for businesses to interact with.
Very different indeed. What about rules for kids' data or notifying breaches? Anything unique there?
Yes, absolutely. For children's data, DPDPA defines a child as under 18. That's higher than GDPR's usual 16 or sometimes 13.
Okay, under 18. and stricter rules.
Very strict. Data fiduciaries cannot process data in a way detrimental to a child. No tracking or behavioral monitoring of children, no targeted advertising aimed at children. And verifiable parental or guardian consent is mandatory. This really limits how online services can interact with younger users in India. For breach notifications, DPDPA is much stricter than GDPR. It mandates notification for all personal data breaches to the Data Protection Board, doesn't matter how big or small or the risk of harm.
All breaches, regardless of risk. That's tough.
Very tough. GDPR's threshold is notifying only high-risk breaches within 72 hours. In India, any breach means reporting to the board. And this is on top of existing rules to report cybersecurity incidents to CERT-In, India's National Computer Emergency Response Team. So dual reporting, often.
Okay, dual reporting, mandatory for all breaches. What about sending data outside India or other key differences?
For international transfers, the Indian government will issue a specific list of restricted countries where data cannot be sent. The law itself doesn't provide mechanisms like GDPR's adequacy decisions, where the EU vets another country's laws or standard contractual clauses.
So less clarity on how to transfer legally, more uncertainty.
Exactly. Organizations face a less defined path. And one more thing. DPDPA doesn't explicitly require maintaining an inventory or record of processing activities like GDPR does. That might simplify some admin, but could make internal tracking harder. It's definitely a unique regulatory environment to navigate.
Okay, we've hit the giants. China, South Korea, India, each with its own complex system. What about Southeast Asia? That often feels like an even more diverse, fragmented region for data governance. And crucially, how does this push for data control link into that worrying trend of digital authoritarianism our sources mentioned? The privacy versus state power balance seems really delicate there.
You're spot on. Southeast Asia is even more fragmented. Various countries have their own privacy laws, each with unique twists reflecting national priorities. Thailand's PDPA 2019, for instance, allows transfers to countries with adequate standards, or using binding corporate rules, BCRs for internal group transfers, or other measures like SCCs. Penalties can hit THB 5 million, even higher with imprisonment for sensitive data issues. Then there's Vietnam's PDPD 2023, fully effective since July 2023. It needs a data transfer agreement and an impact assessment for cross-border transfers. Consent is key, but there are exceptions. And notably, Vietnam imposes data localization requirements for certain service providers.
Data localization again, meaning data has to stay in Vietnam.
For certain types of personal data, yes. That can really hike up operational costs and complexity. And Vietnam's draft penalties are hefty revenue-based fines, business suspension, even deportation for foreigners involved. They're serious. Indonesia's PDPL 2022 requires equivalent protection, safeguards, or consent for transfers, plus DPOs and a quick 3-day breach notification. Malaysia's PDPA 2010 applies extraterritorially, uses a draft whitelist for allowed transfer destinations, needs bilingual notices. The Philippines' DPA 2012 also reaches outside its borders, has a 72-hour breach notice, and specific rules for employee data. Singapore's PDPA 2012, updated 2020, requires a DPO and often uses legally binding contracts for transfers.
It really is a patchwork. Different rules everywhere. Compliance sounds like a full-time job, constantly chasing moving targets. Now, this intense focus on national data control seems like a common theme. How does that connect to digital authoritarianism? It feels like more than just protecting individual privacy is driving some of these laws.
Indeed. The Kyoto Review source makes a crucial connection here. It highlights how these national privacy and cybersecurity laws, especially in Southeast Asia, can actually intersect with and sometimes even bolster this broader, quite insidious trend of digital authoritarianism. This trend, which really picked up speed from the mid-2010s, involves things like increased surveillance, mass data collection, censoring dissent, spreading misinformation deliberately, and online harassment of critics.
And COVID made it worse.
Disturbingly, yes. The pandemic provided a kind of justification for many of these practices. Authoritarian leaders implemented emergency laws, rolled out state-controlled tracing apps, all under the banner of public health. But it massively enhanced their ability to acquire data, normalizing state access to huge amounts of personal information.
Normalizing surveillance, essentially.
Pretty much. And what's chilling is how easily tools meant for public good or security can be twisted for political control. Look at Myanmar. The junta's cyber bill from early 2022 is draconian. It criminalizes VPN use, which people use to bypass censorship, removes the need for objective proof in some cybercrime trials, and basically forces online providers to block criticism of the government.
Following the China-Russia playbook.
Clearly emulating those control systems. And China and Russia have provided tech and political support to Myanmar's military. Cambodia's National Internet Gateway is another blunt example, explicitly designed to control internet traffic and ramp up state surveillance.
What about places seen as more democratic? Are they immune, or is it more subtle?
Even in countries considered more democratic or maybe hybrid regimes, the trend is visible, often just more subtle. Singapore, for example, is described as a flawed democracy. The elite uses legislation, sometimes seemingly benign laws, to sideline activists, journalists, opposition figures, maintaining one-party dominance. The laws exist, but their application can really restrict free speech. In Indonesia and the Philippines, tactics are more nuanced, but there's been a clear rise in surveillance, repression, online manipulation, even internet shutdowns trends noticeable even before COVID, but becoming more common during 2020-2021. It shows a creeping normalization of digital control.
What's driving this? Why is digital authoritarianism on the rise there?
It's complex, interconnected factors. Significant support from authoritarian patrons like China and Russia is one they actively export surveillance tech and governance models. The nature of social media itself provides fertile ground for spying, misinformation, and persecuting opponents. Sometimes big tech firms have had a, let's say, checkered past dealing with these regimes, maybe prioritizing market access. And finally, the unregulated role of private surveillance firms, think NSO Group and Pegasus spyware. They make incredibly intrusive tech widely available to states, empowering repressive tendencies with off-the-shelf tools. It's a potent, dangerous mix of national control ambitions and easily accessible, powerful technology.
This whole overview really throws that tension into sharp relief, doesn't it? National sovereignty, protecting privacy, versus the absolute need for data to flow in a global economy. It's a real tightrope walk. How do these regional efforts, especially around cross-border data transfers, fit the bigger global picture? And looking ahead, what's the forecast for 2025 in APAC data governance?
Well, connecting it globally, businesses operating internationally face a huge compliance headache with all these diverging laws. The Future of Privacy Forum report really underscores this fragmentation. Every place we've talked about regulates cross-border transfers differently. The mechanisms vary. Getting explicit consent, relying on adequacy decisions like the EU, recognizing Japan's standards using certified binding corporate rules, BCRs, within company groups, employing standard contractual clauses, SCCs, or other suitable protection measures. But you see this fundamental contrast, right, between countries like China with its super strict security assessments and localization demands, and others like Japan actively pushing for more open yet trusted data flows. It's almost a philosophical divide.
Speaking of Japan, their Data Free Flow with Trust, or DFFT initiative, sounds interesting, like a possible middle ground. Can you tell us more? It feels important for the future digital economy.
DFFT is definitely a visionary and critical initiative from Japan. It's not just about free flow. Crucially, it's about ensuring that flow happens while maintaining trust and privacy, security, IP rights. The goal is both seamless global data flows and robust protection. This concept, first floated by former PM Abe back in 2019, has been gaining real traction internationally. It's been discussed and developed at G20, adopted in G7 roadmaps, debated at the World Economic Forum, integrated into OECD work. Japan's G7 presidency in 2023 was a key moment for trying to operationalize DFFT.
So moving from idea to practice.
Exactly. Japan's own data protection authority, the PPC, has built DFFT into its global strategy. They're promoting international certification systems like the Global CBPR Forum, which evolved from the APEC cross-border privacy rules, and working on global model contract clauses. It's a serious push towards harmonizing cross-border transfers, aiming for a trusted digital space.
That does sound like a positive sign amidst the fragmentation. Okay, focusing specifically on 2025 now. What are the key things our sources say we and our listeners absolutely need to watch in APAC data governance? What will shape the near future?
Based on the Hinrich Foundation's analysis, there are 5 critical areas to keep a very close eye on in APAC for 2025. First, digital trade dynamics. The big question is ASEAN's Digital Economy Framework Agreement, DEFA. Will it achieve ambitious, commercially useful outcomes that really open up digital trade? Or will it end up like the RCEP trade deal, lower standards, broad exceptions allowing lots of national control, hindering data flows?
And the U.S. role, does it matter?
Hugely. Will the U.S. play a constructive, consistent role or stay on the sidelines? Its past start-and-stop approach pulling out of TPP, the less impactful IPF doesn't help build confidence. Their engagement, or lack thereof, really shapes the regional dynamic. Second thing to watch. Potential regional backsliding. There's a real risk that instead of building on solid agreements like CPTPP, the region might actually regress.
How would we see that happen?
Symptoms would be a low-ambition DAFA, maybe with RCEP-style loopholes for data transfers, localization, source code demands, or countries joining agreements like CPTPP but without actually aligning their domestic policies, which undermines the whole point and hinders real consensus.
Okay, trade dynamics, backsliding. What's third? Must be AI,
Nice,
right?
got it. Third is the proliferation of AI policy. Post-ChatGPT, policymakers everywhere feel the pressure. Expect more countries to consider legally binding framework legislation for AI. South Korea was first in APAC, enacting theirs late 2024. Japan and Australia are thinking about it too. But here's the worry. Without a coordinated whole-of-government approach, we'll likely see a flood of sector-specific rules instead. AI and privacy, AI and consumer protection, AI and competition, AI and IP.
A patchwork within each country, not just between them.
Exactly. Compounding the international interoperability mess. And often, these rules target the users or deployers of AI, not necessarily the tech providers themselves. That can lead to misaligned policies if regulators aren't talking to everyone involved. Fourth point for 2025. Enhanced cyber resilience concerns. With criminal and state-backed cyber incidents, espionage, IP theft, even sabotage getting worse, governments will absolutely be forced to harden critical infrastructure.
Reactive, but necessary.
Right. This will drive new policies, more investment, just trying to bolster defenses against increasingly sophisticated attacks. And finally, the fifth crucial area, U.S. engagement in the region. Huge uncertainty here, especially with a potential second Trump administration. Will they focus data policy efforts on like-minded partners, Australia, NZ, Japan, Singapore, maybe Taiwan, countries with similar systems? Or will they try to include a broader group, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, who might resist binding commitments that limit their own digital policies? Given the history of U.S. policy reversals like pulling out of TPP, there are real trust issues. Other countries might hesitate to invest heavily in long-term digital initiatives with the U.S. That uncertainty alone is a major headache.
So wrapping up this incredibly detailed deep dive, it's crystal clear the Asia-Pacific is this buzzing hub of digital activity. But it's facing this rising tide of really sophisticated cyber threats, AI-powered scams, rampant ransomware, you name it. At the same time, the data governance landscape is just incredibly complex, incredibly varied. Every country seems to be forging its own path, sometimes aligning with global standards like GDPR, other times diverging quite significantly, often driven by national security, national control. We've seen how critical those cross-border data transfer mechanisms are, and the constant tension between needing international cooperation and respecting national priorities that sometimes worryingly lean towards greater state control, even digital authoritarianism. And we really want to underscore again that navigating these challenges is absolutely vital for organizations operating in this space. That's why resources like those offered by our sponsor, www.CISOmarketplace.com, are so important in helping you stay informed, find solutions, and maintain robust security and compliance in such a dynamic environment. Check them out at www.CISOmarketplace.com.
And it leaves us with a fundamental question, really. As the digital and physical worlds merge ever closer, and as nations wrestle with controlling information, how much of our digital future ultimately will be shaped by that relentless push for national security versus the absolute imperative for open yet trusted data flow? Where is that balance finally going to settle?
That is a profound question for all of us to think about. Thank you for guiding us through that complex landscape today. We really hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, a much clearer picture and some genuinely valuable insights into the fast-evolving, often challenging world of cyber governance in the Asia-Pacific. We absolutely encourage you to keep learning, stay informed on these vital topics. Because one thing's for sure, this landscape is only going to get more dynamic. Until next time on The Deep Dive.